By hour 4, Grant had stopped pretending it was a review. He stood at the head of the room with a laser pointer he didn't need, walking 22 people through a list of my supposed failures, the latency issue from March, the rollback in the spring, a missed deadline that hadn't been mine. He said my name often, the way you say a name when you want everyone to remember it attached to something broken. My name is Nadia Okonkwo. I was 43, and I had built most of what he was blaming me for. I sat near the middle of the long table and I didn't interrupt. People kept glancing at me, waiting for the flinch, the defense, the crack in the face. I gave them nothing. I folded my hands, and I let him talk. That surprised him, I think. Silence usually does. A person defending themselves can be cut down. A person who simply listens is harder to manage because there's nothing to push against. I'd been quiet a long time by then. Years, if I'm honest. And somewhere in the third hour I understood why I'd stayed quiet through all of it. I hadn't been afraid. I'd been waiting. I'd been waiting 3 years for a room exactly this full, with exactly the right people in it, and Grant had just built that room for me without knowing it. So I let him finish. I let him spend all 5 hours. When he was done, he looked at me and, almost as an afterthought, offered me 3 minutes to respond. 3 minutes was more than I needed. I built the platform in a windowless room over the better part of a year, back when nobody wanted to touch it. It was the unglamorous kind of work, the billing engine underneath everything, the part that had to never fail. When I started, the old system went down twice a month. By the time I was done, we ran at 99.98% uptime, and it stayed there for 6 years. 6 years is a long time to keep something alive. Long enough that people forget it was ever built by hands. It just becomes the floor they stand on. Grant came later. He was good at the part I was bad at. The standing up in front of people, the clean summary, the confident nod to the executives. At first I was grateful for it. I didn't want the meetings. I wanted the code to be right, and it was. And I told myself that was the whole job. So I let him carry the story upstairs. I let him say we when he meant she. And then I let him say I. It happened slowly, the way the tide takes a beach. 1 quarter he was presenting my architecture. The next quarter, it was his architecture. I was in the room for some of it, watching my own decisions come out of his mouth. And I said nothing, because saying something felt smaller than the work. For a long time I told myself the work was enough. The work was enough. I wasn't. There's a particular way a person disappears inside a company, and it isn't loud. Nobody announces it. It happens in the edits. It started in the 3rd quarter of that 2nd year. Grant took my architecture upstairs in a deck, 40 slides, clean and polished, and somewhere between his laptop and the boardroom my name came off the title page. Not moved, not shrunk, gone. I found out because Tomas forwarded me the file afterward with a single line. You seeing this? Tomas Herrera had been beside me since the windowless room days. He was 38, sharp-eyed, and he'd watched the whole slow theft happen in real time. He couldn't understand why I let it. That's your design, Nadia, he said one afternoon by the coffee machine, keeping his voice down. Your name should be on it. Say something. I'll back you. I told him I appreciated it. I told him not yet. He didn't like that answer. I could see him filing it away, the way he filed away everything, quietly, in that careful head of his. I didn't know then how much he was keeping. I only knew he was the kind of man who kept things. The truth was simpler than he thought. It wasn't fear, and it wasn't pride. A correction in a hallway changes nothing. An email to HR gets softened into a misunderstanding. I'd watched people spend themselves on small rooms and lose. Tomas said I should say something. I told him the truth. Not yet. The room wasn't big enough. Here's the part nobody knew. For 6 years, I'd kept everything. Not out of strategy at first, just habit. The same instinct that makes you keep the receipt for something expensive. Every design doc I wrote, I saved with the date it was written. Every major decision, I recorded. Who raised it, what we chose, why. Every commit was already time-stamped by the system itself, and there were more than 1,400 of them with my name on them, stretching back to before Grant ever joined the company. I had the founding architecture document, the very first one, dated a full year before he arrived. None of it was hidden. Exactly. It just sat in a folder nobody thought to look in. Quiet and complete and waiting. I hadn't built the archive to win anything. But somewhere in that fourth hour of being told I was the problem, something in me settled. I stopped doing the thing I'd done for years without noticing, which was covering for him, filling his gaps in meetings, softening his mistakes before they reached the founder, letting his version stand because correcting it felt like vanity. I was done softening. I wasn't going to argue with Grant. Arguing was his medium, not mine. He was faster with a room, louder, better at making a story feel true by force. I couldn't beat that, and I didn't need to. I was going to hand the room the receipts and let them do the math. Like, dislike. The all hands started at 9, and it should have ended by 10. Instead, Grant kept the floor. He had slides. He had a tone. He moved from the quarters numbers into something else entirely, and by the second hour, everyone understood this wasn't a review of the work. It was a review of me. He was thorough. I'll give him that. He walked the room through every incident he could hang on my name, pausing to let each one land, watching the faces around the table adjust. 22 people sat there, and the wider department watched on the call, and hour after hour the version of me in that room got smaller. It's a strange thing, hearing yourself described as a liability by someone using tools you built to display the slides. I kept still. I'd decided that already. Then, somewhere in the fourth hour, he overreached. He pulled up the platform, our billing engine, the thing that had held at 99.98% for 6 years. And he said he'd designed it, not led it, not overseen it, designed it from nothing, in his words. He said it easily, the way you say a thing you've said so often you've stopped hearing it. But this time the room wasn't the usual room. Eleanor Vance was in it, the founder. She'd built the company in a garage, and she remembered who did what, and she was watching Grant with a stillness I recognized, because it was my own. He said he designed it from nothing. Eleanor Vance was in the room. That was his mistake, not mine. Like dislike? When Grant offered me 3 minutes, I didn't stand. I stayed in my chair and asked if I could share my screen. He waved a hand, generous in the way of a man who thinks he's already won. I opened one folder. I want to be careful here, I said, so I'm just going to show you when things were made. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. I put the founding architecture document on the screen and let everyone read the date at the top. A full year before Grant joined the company. Then I opened the design records, time-stamped, one after another. Then the commit history, more than 1,400 entries, my name beside them. Stretching back through 6 years the room had just watched him claim as his own. I didn't narrate it much. I didn't accuse him of anything. I let the dates speak, and dates don't argue. They just sit there and are true. The room got very quiet. Not the uncomfortable quiet of the last 5 hours. A different kind. 22 people doing arithmetic at the same time, matching what they'd just heard against what was on the screen, and finding the two didn't line up. Grant said my name. Then he said something about context. Context is what people reach for when the dates have already gone against them. I looked at the clock. I'd used a little under 3 minutes. Eleanor Vance hadn't said a word. She didn't have to. She was looking at the screen, and then she was looking at Grant, and the whole room watched her do it. I didn't accuse him of anything. I just showed them when things were made. The dates did the rest. The reassignment came quietly, a few weeks later. Grant wasn't marched out. There was no announcement, no spectacle. He simply moved to a different part of the company, a lateral title that sounded fine on paper and meant less than it used to. That was enough. Consequence doesn't have to be loud to be real. I never needed to see him humiliated. I'd only needed the record to be straight. And it was. Eleanor Vance found me in the hallway the next week. She didn't make a speech. She just said, "I knew that platform didn't build itself." And then she said she was sorry it had taken 6 years and a 5-hour meeting for the company to say so out loud. I told her the work had mostly been its own reward. She looked at me for a moment and said, "It shouldn't have to be." Then she offered me the principal architect title that should have been mine years earlier. Tomas came by after, grinning, and told me he'd kept his own notes the whole time. Dates and decisions, ready to back mine if it ever came to that. It hadn't come to that, but it mattered that he'd been keeping watch beside me without my knowing. 31 people emailed me in the days after the meeting. Some apologized. Some just said they'd always known. I read them all and answered a few. That night, I opened the archive one last time, the folder I'd kept for 6 years. I looked at the founding document, the date at the top, the quiet proof of a whole life's work. Then, I closed it. Not deleted, just closed. I didn't need it open anymore.